My name is Lisa Thompson, and my job is to create order out of chaos. On May 2nd, 2025, chaos, in the form of the CEO's stepson, decided to fight back. My day always starts at 6 a.m., not with a jarring alarm, but with the gentle simulated dawn of a Philips wake-up light. Order, control, predictability. These are the principles upon which I have built my life and my career. I drink iced black tea, unsweetened year-round from a simple, heavy-bottomed glass tumbler that feels cool and solid in my hand. Hot beverages, I find, are too emotionally volatile for a morning that requires analytical precision. I drive a 10-year-old Subaru Outback, a car chosen for its reliability, not for its flash. Its all-wheel drive is a quiet promise that it will handle any unexpected conditions with predictable stability. My office at HealthNet Corporation was my sanctuary. It was a corner office, not out of seniority, but because it had the best Eastern light for my collection of succulents. I had a dozen of them, each in a simple terracotta pot lining the windowsill. They were small, resilient, complex systems that thrived in a controlled, predictable environment, much like my code. My official title was Senior Systems Integration Manager. It was a typically bland corporate title that explained nothing and conveyed no real authority. What I actually did was act as the central nervous system for a network of over 500 American hospitals. I was the architect and sole guardian of Project Caduceus. Caduceus is not a database. It is a translation engine. It is a digital Rosetta Stone for the fragmented, chaotic world of American healthcare. For 8 years, I took the wildly incompatible patient record systems from 500 different institutions, from modern, cloud-based Epic platforms running on FHIR standards to ancient, dusty servers in hospital basements still running on a 40-year-old language called MUMPS, and I taught them how to speak to each other, securely, instantly, without a single data breach in 8 years. That morning, my first call was with Frank Miller, the IT director of a small rural hospital in Montana. He was a good man, perpetually overworked, with a coffee mug the size of a soup bowl and a perpetually worried expression. "Lisa," he said, his face weary on my screen, "our old Meditech system is throwing a fit again. It's trying to format new patient IDs as 7 digits, but the state registry just switched to an 8-digit alphanumeric. The systems are refusing to talk to each other. We can't admit new patients." This was my world. A tiny, bureaucratic change in a state government office could threaten to cut off a rural hospital from the entire network. "It's okay, Frank," I said calmly, already pulling up his node's configuration file. "It's a mapping issue. The new format is confusing the validation protocol. Give me an hour. I'll write a patch for the translation filter and deploy it remotely." He let out a deep sigh of relief that fogged up his camera for a second. "You're a lifesaver, Lisa. I swear, without you, this whole thing would fall apart. We're all a bit nervous with the new guy shaking things up." I knew who he meant. "Change is always a challenge," I offered, a neutral, corporate-approved platitude. "This feels different," he said, lowering his voice. "Feels like the new guy thinks the plumbing fixes itself." "The plumbing is my job, Frank," I assured him. "It's not going to fall apart." Creating order from chaos. That was my promise. The new agent of chaos was Ryan Sterling. At 27 years old, he was the new VP of Technology, and more importantly, the CEO's stepson. He had an MBA from a good school, perfectly manicured nails, and the kind of deep, unshakable confidence that only comes from a life devoid of real consequences. He believed healthcare IT was, in his words, just basic database management. His cruelty was not loud or aggressive. It was the quiet, passive-aggressive cruelty of the profoundly insecure. He started by cancelling my long-standing weekly sync meetings with the hospital IT directors, the very meetings where I built the human relationships that made the system work. He sent a memo explaining that these were unproductive chatter that would be replaced by an automated ticketing system. He then began referring to my team of highly specialised engineers, the best in the field, as the legacy maintenance crew. The first direct assault came during a team meeting he called to outline his new vision. Ryan, glowing with self-satisfaction, projected a new infographic onto the screen. It was a piece of corporate art, all clean lines and friendly, generic icons. It showed a simple plug icon connecting a hospital to a fluffy white cloud. Underneath, the tagline read, "Healthcare integration simplified." "This is the future, people," he said, pacing in front of the screen like a budget version of a tech guru. Cloud-native synergy, a low-code, no-code solution. Plug and play, the words were a meaningless jumble of buzzwords he'd read in an airline magazine. He was proposing to replace a bespoke, hand-built supercar with a generic skateboard because they both had wheels. "Ryan," I said, my voice even and calm, "that's a clean graphic. I have a technical question. The infographic shows a standard API call, but how does the proposed off-the-shelf middleware handle the non-standard character encoding from a legacy Meditech system, like the one in Frank Miller's hospital, without corrupting the diacritical marks in patients' last names? That would be a HIPAA violation for data integrity." He stopped pacing. A flicker of annoyance, then panic, crossed his face. He looked to his two newly hired VPs, who suddenly found the tops of their shoes to be the most fascinating things in the room. He had no idea what I'd just said, but he knew it was a question he couldn't answer. He recovered with a sneer. "That's exactly the kind of in-the-weeds, legacy thinking we need to move past," he snapped, his voice suddenly sharp. "We're not building a rocket ship here, Lisa. We're just moving text files around." He had no idea what he was really trying to steal. He didn't see the 8 years of late nights in freezing server rooms. He didn't see the thousands of hours I spent personally mapping the unique data quirks of each hospital. He didn't see the complex web of human trust and technical precision. He just saw an over-engineered custom solution and a woman who was questioning his authority. The public humiliation was, of course, staged for maximum impact. It happened at the annual HealthNet Hospital Administrators Conference in Orlando. The air in the ballroom was a stale mix of industrial carpeting, lukewarm coffee, and the forced cheerfulness of corporate networking. I was seated in the front row, a place of honor that was about to become a spotlight for my own execution. Ryan was the keynote speaker. He strode onto the stage, a natural performer, his voice booming with a false confidence that grated on my nerves. He spoke of the future. He spoke of efficiency. He spoke of synergy. And then he came to me. "For too long," he announced, his eyes finding mine in the crowd, "we have been held back by over-engineered custom solutions that create dependencies and stifle innovation. That's why I'm pleased to announce a pivot to more cost-effective, industry-standard commercial software." He paused for dramatic effect, letting the weight of his announcement settle. "As part of this transition to a more agile future, Lisa Thompson will be leaving the company. We thank her for her service and wish her the best." A ripple of shock and confusion went through the audience. The hospital IT directors, the people like Frank Miller who actually understood what I did, looked at each other in horror. Ryan had just fired the one person keeping the entire network from collapsing into chaos. I did not react. I did not show anger or hurt. I simply stood up, gave a small, polite nod to my stunned colleagues at my table, and walked out of the ballroom. As I walked down the long, garishly carpeted hallway, a hand touched my arm. It was a respected, older administrator from a major hospital network in California. "That boy has no idea what he's just done," he said, his eyes full of concern. "This is a disaster." I simply nodded again. My dignity was the one thing he could not touch. The audience was left with a cold fury and a desperate need to see his hubris meet its inevitable consequence. In the quiet of my home office that evening, there was no panic. There was only the calm, methodical execution of a plan I had put in place years ago. My revenge was not an act of sabotage. It was an act of perfect, passive precision. I had built this system with one hidden feature. The feature was me. Project Caduceus was a bespoke masterpiece. What he didn't understand was that its core, the proprietary data mapping protocols that acted as the Rosetta Stone, was not fully documented. Years ago, after watching another brilliant engineer get pushed out and his work outsourced and ruined, I had made a decision. The official corporate documentation would be a high-level guide, intentionally incomplete. It was a defensive measure. The true map, the complex, ever-evolving logic of the system, existed in only two places: my own head and my personal, heavily encrypted notebooks. During my exit interview 2 days later, a cheerful HR representative named Brenda, who was half my age, slid a stack of papers across the desk. "We just need you to sign the standard NDA and confirm you've returned all company property and documentation," she said with a practiced smile. I thought about the terabytes of institutional knowledge in my brain, the complex data maps that represented millions of dollars in intellectual property. I signed the NDA with a small private flourish, the ink from my pen dark and final. I handed her a single slim binder. It contained the high-level, useless official guide. "It's all in there," I said, my expression neutral. She smiled, checked a box on her form, and offered me a branded water bottle as a parting gift. I declined. And that was it. I walked out of the HealthNet building for the last time, carrying my box of personal effects. My succulents, my glass tumbler, and the encrypted hard drives that contained the real soul of the machine. The system's collapse was now a mathematical certainty. Ryan's team attempted the initial data migration. The system immediately began to reject their control. The first tremors were small. An engineer on my old team, a young woman I had personally mentored, sent me a discreet, panicked text. "The new software is misinterpreting allergy fields from Saint, Jude's legacy system. We had 3 false positives. In an hour, I simply replied, 'Follow the documentation.'" I knew, of course, that the documentation would be useless. Ryan, I was told, dismissed it as a minor teething issue. He was a man happily admiring the cracks in a dam, completely unaware of the immense pressure building behind it. He held a disastrous video call with his new, overwhelmed team, where he blamed my messy old system for the problems, and told them to just push through it. 2 weeks later, he pushed the button to take the new system fully live. The result was an immediate, catastrophic failure. The cheap, industry-standard software, with its generic templates, tried to force the chaotic, unique data of 500 hospitals into a one-size-fits-all box. It was like trying to translate 50 different languages using only a French to English dictionary. A patient's blood type field from one hospital was misinterpreted as a social security number in another. A critical medication dosage from a third was mapped to a date of birth field from a fourth. Across 500 hospitals, 50 million patient records were instantly rendered a nonsensical, dangerous jumble. Alarms blared across the healthcare network. Patient safety was critically compromised. The company was now facing one of the largest HIPAA violation events in history. And Ryan Sterling was helpless. I watched his world collapse in real time. The news alerts on my phone started as a trickle, then became a flood. HealthNet Corp suffers massive data breach. Patient records corrupted in nationwide system failure. federal investigation launched into HealthNet's HIPAA violations. I saw a clip of Ryan on a financial news network. He looked pale and sweaty, his usual confidence gone, replaced by a deer in the headlights terror. He blamed legacy data issues and unforeseen complexities. He was a child trying to explain astrophysics. I got a call from Frank in Montana. He sounded terrified. "Lisa, it's a nightmare. We almost gave a patient a fatal dose of penicillin. His chart said he had no allergies. Turns out the system swapped his allergy data with the patient in the next bed. Lab results are scrambled. Appointments are being sent to the wrong people. What do we do?" I had to keep my voice steady, professional. "Frank, you need to report all issues through the official HealthNet channels," I said, though it felt like a betrayal. I had to let it burn. The call from the board came on a Monday morning. It was an emergency video conference. I saw the grim faces of the board members, the CEO, and the furious general counsel of their largest hospital network. I was patched in from my home office. Ryan was on the screen, looking small and terrified. In his panic, he tried one last desperate move. "She must have sabotaged the old system," he blurted out. "This is her fault." HealthNet's own general counsel cut him off, her voice like ice. "Mr. Sterling, our forensics show no evidence of sabotage. The old system is untouched. The failure is entirely within the new software you commissioned and implemented." The hospital's lawyer, a woman with eyes like chips of ice, addressed me directly. "Miss Thompson," she said, her voice sharp, "we are facing a crisis of unprecedented scale. Our clients' lives are at risk. Is this data recoverable?" I took a calm sip of my iced tea. I looked at the small, pixelated image of Ryan's terrified face on my screen. The look on his face when he realized that his entire world, his career, his future, was now resting in the hands of the woman he had so casually and cruelly dismissed. "The data isn't lost," I said, my voice cold and clear. "It's just disorganized. Someone with the right map could probably restore it. But I believe Ryan felt that maps were an overengineered solution." The silence on the call was profound. In that moment, everyone understood. The board acted with the swiftness of the truly terrified. Ryan was fired. The CEO, his stepfather, was forced to resign. Facing industry-wide panic, federal investigations, and over $3 billion in pending lawsuits, they offered me my terms. It was not a negotiation. I would return as Chief Technology Officer with a 35% equity stake in the company. To settle with federal regulators, HealthNet was forced to make my proprietary data mapping and validation protocols public. They became the new federal gold standard for all medical systems, enshrined in law as the Thompson Healthcare Data Protection Standard. My name was now synonymous with patient data integrity. Ryan Sterling was not just fired. He and the former CEO were indicted by the Department of Justice for gross negligence leading to massive HIPAA violations. His name became a notorious case study in the dangers of nepotism and technological ignorance. The final scene is this. I am in my new, expansive CTO office. The first thing I did was rehire my entire old team at a 20% raise. The generic corporate art that Ryan had installed is gone, replaced by a complex, beautiful, real-time data visualization of the restored hospital network. My succulents are on the windowsill, thriving in the light. This morning, I received an email from Frank in Montana. The subject line was just, "Thank you." Attached was a photo of his hospital server room. On the wall was a newly framed certificate, Thompson Standard Compliant. That, I thought, is the real bottom-line deliverable. My victory is total. My expertise is now law. And my personal and professional triumph is absolute. The chaos has been contained, and order, my order, has been restored.